Welcome to the Vertical Cafe podcast, where community connects through coffee and conversation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Vertical Cafe podcast. Today, Rod sits to my left, and our guest is Al Ferreira. Al, welcome to the Nook.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I love what you guys are doing, and I've watched the first couple of episodes, and it's like I don't know how I ended up in the top 10 to start this. So it just
One of the ways that you did that was you recently wrote a book in collaboration with some other authors, but. Yeah, you're generally well liked from the research that I've done. A lot of
gosh, okay,
secondhand friends, mutual friends, and so today we wanted to talk to you about, I'm guessing, one of your favorite subjects, leadership.
Absolutely, it's been my career. It's 45 years of practicing leadership through work, through family, through everything. John Maxwell, who is a mentor, says it all the time. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Mm-hmm. And I'm just a huge believer in that. So
yeah.
Well, before we get to the career and some of the things that you've done in your journey, I want to reverse all the way back to your childhood, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So let's go back to there. Where were you born? And how did you end up in good old Warsaw, New York?
It's quite the journey, because I was born in Natal, Brazil.
Okay.
And we moved here. Our family, my dad, mom, my sister, and I, and his parents moved to Southern California. We moved to Hollywood, literally.
Okay.
Nice.
We lived in Hollywood because 1968. Where do you go when you go to America? You go to Hollywood. And so we moved here on my 4th birthday.
Okay.
In 1968.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. It just 56 years later. But it was, we spoke Portuguese, so there was this whole getting to,
there's a language barrier.
English. My sister, who's a year older than me, started kindergarten a month later. I got to sit at home, and for those who remember 1968, 69, what started then? Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers were both on PBS. That's how I learned to speak English.
Oh, wow.
Is watching Sesame Street and watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
No kidding.
So,
yeah. Interesting.
Fantastic stuff.
So you moved to Southern California,
Correct.
You moved to Hollywood, and you thought you were going to make it big,
right?
Did you do any child acting?
No. Well, yes and no. Just stage stuff.
Yeah.
But nothing. Nothing.
Were your parents into the movie industry or just?
No, my dad was an airplane mechanic for the Brazilian Air Force, and he literally came here to work for Hughes Airlines. And then when he got here, like 3 weeks later, they laid off a bunch of people, and he ended up working at a Copper Skillet restaurant as a line cook.
Oh, no kidding.
Wow.
Yeah. So
okay.
And then he built himself up and ended up buying a gas station and started an auto parts. So he was just the consummate salesperson. Death of a Salesman, the book. Yeah. I related to that book a lot. So.
So here you are in Hollywood.
We were in Hollywood just for a little while. We ended up in the Pasadena area.
Okay.
20 minutes, away from Hollywood, and grew up in that area. Went to school, high school there, and I actually, in school. So 1968. What happens in 1968? We land on the moon. I remember waking up to watch that, or my parents came and woke us up, and we're watching it on the TV, and so I wanted to be an astronaut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In high school, got recruited to go to the Air Force Academy, and then they realized that I wore contact lenses, and I'm blind as a bat. So I didn't go to the Air Force Academy. Yeah.
Siblings? So how many siblings do you have?
My sister, who's a year older than me. So
you and your sister.
And then I have two half brother and half sister who are 20 years younger than me. So it just,
Okay.
yeah.
Very good. And then what? So you're in California.
Right.
You went to high school in California.
Right.
Did you further your education there, or did you?
Yeah. I ended up going to school. I went to school on the 7.5 year system because I couldn't afford to go to school full time, so I'd take breaks and make money, go back to school.
Sure.
That sort of thing.
Gotcha.
California State Polytechnic University, Pomona. That's a mouthful.
Okay.
So Cal Poly Pomona. So it just, great school.
And what was your major there?
I was a communications major in journalism and organizational communication.
Oh wow.
So,
Okay.
so I worked on the school newspaper. I was the editor of the school magazine.
And were you in drama club by chance?
Yes. Drama, choir, orchestra. I played the stand-up bass.
Okay.
In junior high and high school. I could say I was a professional musician because I actually, after high school, got paid a little bit.
Yeah.
But then in order to continue school, I ended up having to sell my bass so I could afford to go to school.
Wow, no kidding.
So,
Okay.
yeah, crazy.
So how did you end up getting to Warsaw, New York, or New York, and then to Warsaw?
I started working at the YMCA in Temple City, California, just outside of Pasadena, and at 15, I was 2 weeks shy of being 16 years old. I was a junior counselor in the day camp, and when my Apollo astronaut desires smashed to bits, I'm going to be a writer and work on newspapers and magazines and that sort of thing. And while I was doing that, I was working at the Y. And in the summers, I'd go off to summer camp in the mountains and kept doing that and finished school and went to work for a newspaper. Like within 2 weeks, I got a job at a newspaper, the Pasadena newspaper, the Pasadena Star News. And 6 months later, we got married. And within 3 months of that, my wife said, "You are miserable and you need to go back to the Y." So I ended up going back to running a YMCA camp.
Okay.
And we ran a camp on one side of the mountain for the Pasadena YMCA, and then I moved to the Redlands YMCA. I know you don't know any of these towns, but and then we in 2004 we moved to Florida to a YMCA camp there, and in 2009 we ended up running the YMCA camp just up here on the hill in Gainesville.
Okay.
And we've been here ever since.
And what year was that?
That was 2009.
2009.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Oh, very good.
And when I left the Y in 2016, we moved into the village.
Okay.
So we went from the YMCA to being village people.
Nice.
Very good. Gotcha.
See, yeah,
Can you do it? Can you give us a little show with the?
Is that one of the things with the Y? Like you're not allowed to do that? Or?
The YMCA never made a dime off of the Village People song,
Gotcha.
YMCA. And if you listen to the lyrics, it's not a really good song.
It doesn't match up.
Everyone loves the YMCA part, but listen to the other part, to the other verses, and it's
true. Nobody's listening. They're just waiting for the build to the YMCA part.
And
that's so funny.
So it's like the NBA. They don't give a dime to the YMCA, and the YMCA invented basketball. Naismith, Canadian, at the Springfield YMCA.
And some people don't even know what the YMCA stands for. Do you want to share that?
Young Men's Christian Association.
Founded by.
It was founded in England in 1844.
Okay.
And they ended up here about 11 years later. And kind of the movement spread across the country. And, the whole idea was young men working in factories in England, in London, during the, 1844, during the Industrial Revolution, and they decided, hey, we need to have some spiritual guidance, some morality, because the alternatives were, you worked all day, you slept upstairs in the factory, and the vices that were on the streets of London to invite you to, weren't really that great. So it was really about Bible study and Christian emphasis. And to this day, the YMCA of the USA, to put Christian principles into practice for and grow spirit, mind, and body for all. So the for all is the founding scripture, John 17:21, that they all may be one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Very good. That's
I'm
interesting.
not a scripture person, but
Sure.
but I know that one
Yeah.
because, again, 40 some odd years in Y. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's good to know that, because a lot of people do not know that. They've gotten so far away from, what would you call it, being bold about that
Right.
C in the YMCA.
Yeah.
And so, but I do notice here in Warsaw that they've brought some of that back, meaning that they put it out there more.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And from Y organization to Y organization, it varies.
Sure.
It just the Warsaw Y is part of the
Glow, is that what they call it?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Glow YMCA. So Batavia and Genesee, Livingston, Orleans, Wyoming County.
Yeah.
YMCA. So they're not related to the Buffalo YMCA or Western, whatever it's called now. It's two separate organizations. They're chartered by the YMCA of the USA that, basically says, you have to do these dozen things or 25 things to be called a YMCA and
Okay.
pay your national dues, and you're a chartered YMCA.
Gotcha.
So, but going from Y to Y, yeah, the emphasis in the C in the YMCA is been sometimes lacking. Sometimes, it just, when I was with the Redlands YMCA, you walk in the door, there's Jesus on the wall, and, there's a chapel in that YMCA so a lot of Ys have that.
Sure.
I actually worked with a subset of the YMCA community doing Christian leadership conferences through camp.
Okay.
I about 26 of those around the country. And there was hundreds of them, but I was
Sure.
involved directly in about 26 different
Okay.
ones. So
Okay.
from Southern California to Florida to Portland, Oregon to Seattle, and to right here at Camp Fitch in outside of Erie, Pennsylvania.
Okay. So did you travel a lot then for the Y, or did they set you put you somewhere and you were kind of
You kind of go where it is a calling to
Yeah.
do, especially the camp work, because we lived, and when I got married and then we started having kids, we ended up taking a job where we lived and worked at camp.
Okay.
So, year round, they provided housing for you. So that Camp Edwards in Southern California, imagine flying over mountains and you see this pinpoint of light, and all of a sudden, who lives there? Well, that was us. People say, oh, you're moving to Western New York, it's winter, and that. No, we had winter. I was 7,600 feet above sea level
Okay.
in the San Bernardino Mountains. The only time I've ever been trapped someplace without power, without phones, snowed in, was in Southern California, where people don't think that you can get snow. Oh no, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Gotcha. So speaking of the C and the Y, it sounds like you have a Christian foundation then, personally.
yeah.
Okay.
So grew up Catholic. I'm part of the St. Michael's here in town as well. That's really, I work part-time now, and one of my part-time job is running the faith formation with the kids here in Warsaw, in Wyoming County, with St. Michael's.
Okay.
So,
Very good.
so we cover from here to East Bethany to Perry and all that. So
Gotcha.
basically, the catechism is what they used to call it.
Oh, yeah,
We call
yeah.
it faith formation now, and grade level. And I work with actually Tammy Traitline, who was your last guest. Her daughter's in my confirmation group right now.
Okay.
So I've had all her kids actually,
Yeah.
come through
Yeah.
the confirmation program.
Oh, very good.
So,
So here you are in Warsaw, New York, and you have a family of, you have 3 children,
three
correct?
kids, yeah. So, well, they're all,
They're adults now?
they're all adults.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alec is 30. Kelly lives in Chicago, is 28, and Brian is 22.
Okay.
So the baby, as we call him, is 22
The
years
baby's
old.
22,
So
yeah.
it just he's actually right now, as we speak, till the end of the month, he's in the Sea of Cortez doing a program with Knowles. Knowles is the National Outdoor Leadership School.
Okay.
They do leadership programs through outdoor adventure. They are one of the best organizations at teaching people how to teach.
Mm.
So part of his program that he's doing, he's learning how to sail, right? I mean, he's gone sailing before, but he's learning how to sail. But what's great about Knowles is they'll teach you how to teach while they're teaching you how to learn.
Wow.
So he
Okay.
can leave there and go out and start teaching other people how to sail.
I've never heard of them. Noel, it's called?
Knowles,
Okay,
yeah,
Knowles.
Knowls, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, Google them. They're a great organization. They've been around for, they're like, oh my gosh, what's the other one? So many of them.
Yeah.
We'll have to check that out, though. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you have a heart for young men,
Kids,
Kids,
really. Yeah,
kids,
yeah. So,
in informing them and teaching them and leading them.
yeah. It just, when I went off to camp, in my teens, up to camp, to a Christian leadership conference, it was like I was kind of lost in, teenagehood, not knowing what to do. And I got there, and, it just these people that with, these long tan legs who knew how to play guitar, and, gregarious folks. These are my people. This is what I want to do, and, it helped me find who I was. So providing that for young people for the last 4.5 decades has been, a passion. And then, I talk about growing up in a household family. It wasn't easy. It was a difficult upbringing at best. It just a lot of challenges. So providing a place where kids can be safe to be kids, is really what I've done over in the camp. You're creating a community.
Sure.
Like what you do here,
Mm-hmm.
through vertical and within, community building.
Yeah.
It's through the vehicle of selling coffee,
Right.
and drinks and sandwiches and stuff.
Sure.
We do at camp by bringing kids together in a safe place where they can take positive risks of doing things that they've never done before, whether it's ride a horse, shoot a bow and arrow, go in a canoe, climb a climbing wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say all the time to our staff, the entire time I've worked in camping, is it's not about the kids coming to camp to do archery or canoeing. It's about what happens on the way from canoeing to archery that transforms kids' lives, and creating, helping leaders skill build so they know how to do that. They're naturally inclined sometimes, and sometimes you got to coax it out of them, and so, doing that for kids, young leaders is where I found my big passion.
And I think that's
So,
important.
yeah.
So important. Because sometimes these kids do not get that at home. Maybe like, I don't know what your situation was growing up.
Clearly not.
Yeah.
I clearly did not get that at home.
So that's become
yeah.
a passion of yours. And I think it's so important, especially in today's society, today's generation, where a lot of it's just everybody's on their phones or iPads or whatever, and they're communicating that way. They're creating relationships through social media, and getting them outdoors, learning some face-to-face leadership skills, and tangible things that they can they can learn from, I think is so important.
And it's more important now than it ever has been.
Yeah.
Take 8 or 10 kids, put them in a cabin a little bit bigger than this room with bunks and 2 leaders, and have them spend a week or 2 weeks together and expect it to go well.
Yeah.
Kids are going to clash. They're
Sure.
they're going to have different wants and needs, and you get your morning kids, your evening kids, your mid-afternoon kids. They all have to get along, and the leadership is there to help get them through that.
And you seem like the type of gentleman that has the patience for all of that. It takes a special person to be around a group of teenagers or young adults that are full of hormones and have different personalities, and not want to, well, let's just say, slap them, right? So it seems like you got that demeanor and that gift, and God gave you that passion and that calling to do exactly that.
It's creating that safe space for kids,
Yeah.
because I didn't have that safe
Right.
space, and so.
Now, are you retired? You've taken time away from that? Okay.
Yeah. I 4 years ago, godly intervention. I had a car accident that saved my life, and had to step away from working full time. So
How did it save your life?
So I was with a colleague from, I was working with the Scouts at that time. We were headed to a meeting. So I'm the passenger in a car. We got in a car accident, which I have 3 brief memories of, because I had a concussion and the whole middle of the car kind of slammed me over, So I briefly remember airbags, getting out in the snow, and then walking into somebody's house. And then the next thing I know, I'm in the emergency room. And while I'm in the emergency room, the doctor comes over and says, "Hey, did you know you're anemic?" And I'm all, "No." And so a month later, and 2 bone marrow biopsies and a bunch of other sticky tests, where they're poking and prodding you, I turned out to have what's called hairy cell leukemia, which I changed it immediately to Harry Styles leukemia, because Harry Styles is my favorite not Backstreet Boy, One Direction performer.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's got the song about kindness, which is a great song, which actually was on my iPod music list while I was in chemotherapy.
Okay.
So you got to sit there for 6-7 hours in a chair.
Yeah.
And for a certain amount of time, or a few weeks, and so I created a podcast called Calm, and Harry was one of the regular.
Okay.
He was on the rotation.
Very
That's
good.
great.
So,
Yeah,
so you ended up finding out that you have cancer.
Yeah.
Through all of that.
Yeah. So and this was at the height of the pandemic. So there's no vaccine for COVID yet. And my hematologist said, had you gotten COVID and ended up in the ER, you wouldn't have walked out. So, while everyone was living in a bubble, I was in a double bubble. So, Leanne and Alec were home, and, they're wearing a mask around me. I'm downstairs isolated in the living room,
How did you process all that? You seem to be like a people person, so being around people, communicating with others is important to you.
Oh my gosh.
Was that tough?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Our church community was fantastic about being supportive. Leanne's work was fantastic. She works for Complete Payroll out in Perry. They were fantastic about supporting her. So while I'm going to chemo and immunotherapy and stuff and physical therapy because of the car accident, she can't come in to the building because everyone's So that and then I couldn't drive. So she, they're giving her time off and all that. So our church is, Tammy Tradeline again, bringing meals over to, paying it forward, so to speak. I think one of her stories was about getting support while she was, I think, having kids. So, but Yeah, it was crazy. It was just
Yeah.
absolutely crazy. What sustained me was, was asking for prayer and good thoughts from folks,
Okay.
and just putting it out there. One of the kids, I say one of the young people that worked for me at camp here at YMCA Camp Leona, she ended up becoming a nun.
Wow.
Don't hear that very often
Yeah.
nowadays.
Sure. Yeah.
So she had her whole convent in New Mexico, in Roswell, New Mexico, praying for me.
Oh wow.
And different churches and folks that we reached out to, and I'd get messages regularly from folks about that prayer coming through, and that sustained me
Okay.
throughout the whole endeavor.
Yeah.
And what turns out that, the reason I've really stopped working a lot was one of the byproducts of hairy cell leukemia. Again, it's like the rarest leukemia. Go figure. 800 people a year get this.
Wow.
And so I'm in a support group online with them, and half of the folks never go back to work full time, or because fatigue
Okay.
just wears you out,
Mm-hmm.
and which might have a little bit to do with the immunotherapy that they do, that stays in your system forever. And I'll take a shower and okay, nap time. It's like you just don't have the energy
Yeah.
to do anything.
So is something that you can live with long term then? Just if you, what's the prognosis of having something?
It doesn't necessarily detract from your lifespan.
Okay.
It's
Just the
so-
quality of life during
Correct.
your span.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there isn't a cure. It will recur. Sometimes it's 3 years. It could be 7 years. There's one guy in my support group who was in remission since 1999. So he's 26 years without a recurrence.
Gotcha.
So I'm
Okay.
hoping I'm one of those.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah. So because I can't imagine, I last summer I was invited to join this exclusive club, the 60 million over 60, because I turned 60 last summer. You'll it
One day.
someday you
Yes.
might, I see the newspaper, the 30 to under 30 to watch. Well, I'm of 60 million over 60 to watch. So, we I can't imagine being 10 years from now having a recurrence and going through chemo and the immunotherapy again, and how much it takes out of you. I mean, that the 5 months after it ended, I was, nothing. I couldn't do anything, and it was a lot. So so I can't imagine going through that. Hopefully, I'll be one of those that's 20 years out. But yeah, it can recur again.
Yeah.
Harry Styles leukemia.
Harry Styles leukemia.
Yeah. So
Make a
TM.
note of that.
yeah.
So we got some questions also. Well, thank you for sharing that life
Sure.
story.
Yeah.
And
A few other things happen in between.
Sure.
Yeah. Got married.
Well,
had
we'll-
a couple kids.
that's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, how long have you been married?
It'll be 35 years in December.
Oh, God bless you.
Yeah, I've been happily married for 35 years.
Say that again.
I've been happily married for 35 years. My wife has been happily married for 9.5. So it just, they weren't consecutive. There was
Yeah.
a few weeks here, a
Yeah.
few months there.
great.
So yeah.
You do
It
your
just,
best.
I'm the lucky one. I'm the blessed one. The kids are lucky. They have their mom's looks and brains.
Yes.
They have my ears. All
Okay.
three of them
Well-
have my ears. So
I
be
think they
worse.
have your talent when it comes to stage presence, because I've seen that they were most of them, were they in the drama club? Because
They were
enjoy-
all three of them.
All three, yeah.
Were
They enjoy that.
Did shows and that sort of. And then before Tammy took over the theater here, and they had that theater group that was
Yes.
doing. They did some shows here. not going to remember the names of the shows, but
Nevertheless, they got something good from
Yeah.
Pops.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
that's good talent to have.
yeah, actually, Leanne and I met working at a theater in Southern California. So while I
Okay.
was in college, I worked at a local theater, and not a movie theater, like a real theater.
Yeah.
The Southern California Music Theater at the Mission Playhouse. And so I was the house manager and she was an usher. And and we met there.
And so, did you approach her? Or did she see you from afar and go, "Man, I got to get that guy's number"?
We worked together for 3 years before we started dating.
Okay.
And I had a rule: I wouldn't date anybody I worked with. So
You messed that one up.
no, I didn't. The Whittier earthquake shut down the theater in 1987, and so we weren't technically working together. So we actually
That was your chance.
that was my
Thank
chance.
you, earthquake.
Yeah. So our first date, we went to see Fatal Attraction with Michael Douglas and I can't think of the actress's name.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if you've not seen the movie, it's about a relationship, an illicit relationship that goes crazy, and the other woman, kills the
Fatal.
hence the fatal. She ends up killing the family pet bunny.
Oh no! Oh my gosh!
It's a perfect
spoiler alert.
perfect first date movie.
Yes.
It was a
Sounds like
perfect
the
first
80s.
date. Yeah,
Yeah,
87.
yeah.
Yeah. So it just crazy stuff.
Yes.
Sorry, I've done.
No. I got a sidetracked with how many years you were married, but we want to talk about some of the. Well, I'll let Ian take over from here because he has some questions in regards to the book and leadership.
Yeah, and I think just to set us up, can you tell us how you got involved with John C. Maxwell? He's obviously, I don't know if he's well known to everybody, so maybe a little bio on
He's the
him.
number one leadership writer in the world.
He's a leadership guru.
He is
Yes.
a leadership guru and has written 87 books. I think 80 of them have been number one bestsellers. And like you walk through the airport, there's 3 John Maxwell books.
Yeah.
To get people to buy on there. And I, again, in working in the YMCA and being in leadership and being interested in leadership, started reading his books in the 90s, and kept thinking, this applies so much to the work we do at camp. And then I found out in 2013 that he started doing you can become a certified coach, trainer, teacher through the Maxwell Leadership program. And so I did. In 2014, 11 years ago, right around this time, went to the training, went through there's some virtual training, and then you go to a live in-person thing. Got to meet John, and he is my friend. And I've sat through 1,000 hours of leadership training through the Maxwell program. And while I was at the training, the in-person one, it's everything that he talked about. I had an example of how we do that at camp for young people.
Yeah.
And so it just really resounded for me, and it just like, I need to bring this back to what I do. And so I had incorporated it into our leadership training for teens, our LIT program, Leaders in Training, at summer camp and year round. And it just when somebody told me a long time ago, again in the 80s, it's the great quality of a leader is how many leaders they create. And at last count, I had about 11 folks that I've had the pleasure of working with who are out in the country someplace working with young people who I had the opportunity to work with them. A few of them I've mentored, and so it's been just a real pleasure in all that. in the space of the virtual world that we've become, the social media and stuff. I have folks who I worked with in the 80s, 90s, thousands and 2010s and teens reach out to me, and we reconnect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just I have one kid that I talk to probably about once a month, coaching him. He lives in California, has a family of his own, and you know, looks for mentoring. And we were at camp together in 1987,
Wow.
88, 89. Yeah.
That's great. I guess that's a positive thing about social media. Sometimes it gets a bad rap, but in situations like this where you can connect with people thousands of miles away, I think is a wonderful thing. So that's interesting. That's awesome.
Is there anything that you heard from John or any of his courses that is like a particularly meaningful, cherished bit of wisdom that you've used in your various bits of training?
I say it all the time. You know, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. That's one of the core pieces of what he
What does that
talks
mean
about.
to you?
To me, you know, so he wrote a book called The 21 Laws of Leadership, which are things that in order to lead, you need to do these 21 things or have be aware of these 21 things on a regular basis. And so for me, it was applying those on a regular basis. You know, the most difficult person I've ever had to lead is myself. You know, because I know who I am. I know the thoughts that go through my head. But in those 21 laws of leadership, it's all about, you know, making sure that you're being of service to other people, being in you know, in line with other people. You know, it wasn't that I learned new things. It reinforced what I had already learned.
Yeah, through your experiences
Through my
in
experience
the YMCA.
in the Y and other organizations and church and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Out of the 21, is there a couple that you can remember that you could share? That you just spoke of, the 21 things that you must.
You know, the one I've thought a lot about recently has been oh my gosh, this is a problem with the immunotherapy memory
Yes.
issues, not just because I'm 60. So
I don't have any excuses.
I'm
I
trying to
haven't
think of
taken
the word.
immunotherapy at all.
I'm trying to.
And I'm not 60.
So I'm trying to think of the word where the law of legacy,
Mm.
and you know that of what you passing along
Passing along.
you
Okay.
know, and being able to sustain. You know, within that, it's like when you leave an organization, you want to leave it better than what you
Yes.
founded it.
No success without succession.
Exactly. So, you know, one of the things that I knew, like when I took over the camp up here, you know, there was a lot of, you know, it's 800 acres. There was a lot of, in the previous administrations of the camp, folks who, you know, it was a little bit looser in supervision of young people. So, you know, if your kids are coming to camp and I'm in charge of taking care of them, I want to make sure I know where your kid is at every moment of every day, you know, because, yeah. So, you know, it just, one of the things that we put into place, and I'll get to your answer, culturally at the camp was, it wasn't just about the buddy rule. It was about the truddy rule. I've trademarked that word. So if you're going to
Nice.
use truddy, please give
gotta
me.
make a
So
note of
it's three. So a leader and two kids, so that there's always a third person, and moving around, getting, you know. So you know, if you're all in the dining hall and you have to walk to the restroom down outside the building, you don't want to just send two kids off, you know, and so there's always a lead. So I knew about the third year in that we had succeeded in creating that culture and the legacy was ensured. when kids started to go up to their leader and say, I need a truddy to go to the restroom. It wasn't I need to go to the restroom, is I needed a truddy to go to the restroom.
Yeah.
And so when the language and the action builds into what you're doing, you've infiltrated the culture of the organization. And that's a simple example of how it works.
Yeah.
There's larger examples of changing culture in a community, in a culture. So, because camp is just a subculture of the real world. And, we had kids, not just from Western Europe, from all over the world. We had with this camp, we had a relationship with the YMCA of Spain. So they sent kids over every summer for a month to spend time with us in the program. So you're meeting kids from different cultures, different backgrounds, different levels of income and disparity, and it's just it's amazing. So you've got to change the culture at the camp to match welcoming everybody, building that community, and growing it out to all the that they want to come back.
Sure.
When my wife and I went to we did a pilgrimage last year to Portugal and Spain with our church. When we were in Madrid, one of the kids, he's in his 30s, that was with us in 2010 at the camp, reached out and said, "You're going to be in my town. I have to see you. You have to meet my family." And that's impact.
Yes.
And so, because whatever we did together created that lasting, that 14 years later, he still wanted to reconnect with that time in his young life. So, yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to drill down even more on
Sure.
influence, because you said that leadership is influence, nothing
more, nothing less.
So then I guess, how do you influence people, or what is influence? Whichever one of those is the right question to ask. I don't know that I influence anybody. You've met my kids.
I have, yeah. Yes,
I just try to create a community that welcomes people to, to be inclusive and being of service to them. So how do you influence that? It's just you walk the walk and you talk the talk. It's just if you just talk the talk, people are watching more than they are listening. So you have to be the example.
Yeah.
And if I'm at, back to my example of the truddy, if I went to camp and or I'm in the middle of camp and I'm not observing that truddy role, how am I? That's influence if I'm doing what I'm saying I'm doing.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
So the best leading, you're leading by example.
Yeah.
And you're following through because you believe in what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
What was great working for the Y is they had these core values: honesty, caring, respect, responsibility, friendship, that were intrinsic to what you need to model. And so
hundreds of years old by the time that you got there. Yeah.
So it's easy to, here's what trust looks like. Here's what responsibility looks like. Everybody that comes to camp is responsible for themselves and is responsible for cleanup and responsible for, and you're identifying that. You're not just doing it, you're putting a name to it while they're doing it. I think that's a big part of influence, is naming the behavior that you want.
Yeah.
There's a great book called Don't Shoot the Dog.
Okay.
By Karen Pryor, which is about training dogs, but it's not. It's about leading people, and it's about when somebody starts to approximate the behavior that you want them to do, you reward them. And what do people want to hear? Well, they want to hear, Rod. They want to hear their name. They want to know that they're doing that. Rod, that was great the way you helped Ian, do this or that, or, it just, I think it's great the way you involve yourself, not only here at the store, but within the community to grow this community.
Mm-hmm.
So, hopefully my positive interaction with you about that behavior will encourage you to do more of that behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's influence.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Plain and simple.
Yes. So let's talk about, did you have any other questions in regards to the leadership or
No, I wanted to move into, I feel like a lot of what you just said kind of is at the core of, I'm uncertain of how the book was sort of compiled, but did you write a chapter or did you kind of cross-reference each other?
No, we wrote the chapters in advance. So Tricia is the lead author and owns the publishing company that helped publish this and get it. And she and I were in the Maxwell program. Actually, a few other people were, but she and I were together a
Awesome.
decade ago, and so we connected, and we would connect on a semi-regular basis doing different things. And last year about this time, I'm home not working, being, all fuddy-duddy about life. And she invited me, hey, I'm putting together this book on servant leadership. Would you be interested? So what's great about this book is it's servant leadership. So there's somebody from the medical field, somebody from education, somebody who's been in the nonprofit world. That was me. Somebody whose family owns a furniture company business in North Carolina or South Carolina, I forget which. So Trisha's the only one I've met. Everybody else, the other 8 authors are in different parts of the country that she had already worked with, and so it's about our journey in servant leadership, how we came to find that that's the best way to go. That we've all worked for that hierarchical, top-down leadership.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do. It's my way or the highway. It just we've all been there. So it just.
So this welcoming community of positive influence is something that you found to work across all these different domains.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Would you mind passing both of us one of those so we can just...
Sure. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
want to take a look here.
Yeah.
Got it.
So so we each have a chapter. It's a little bit of my journey in coming to servant leadership, and kind of an example in my chapter about a real world camp example. I've changed the names to protect the innocent of of the folks who we had. I had a leadership team, and one of the folks who was our operations person was very servant leader minded, and one of the folks was very driven by his own ego, and it was the cult of.
Sure.
Not that we have any examples of that in the world right now of leaders who are thriving because they are top down. I'm more important than the group. And it's like, well, no.
Yeah. Rod and I were talking about earlier how you definitely see both strategies employed. And not everything's binary, but it does seem to be a little bit that way, that there are people that lead by example, and then there are people that have a high expectation and are very effective through whatever means necessary of getting their ends accomplished. And yeah,
absolutely.
And I read a little bit of what I could online, and it does resonate with me where I am in my season of life and running the business here at the cafe. But not everybody fits into that. I personally think it's the best way to lead.
Absolutely.
However, there are other effective leadership strategies. So, for example, my brother owns 3 businesses, and him and I don't work well together because we have different leadership styles. But he's successful in whatever he does. His leadership style is I wouldn't say it's top down, but he's got a different personality, and it's cut and dry. It's black and white, and He's a big motivator, though.
Mhm.
He's a big motivator, and people will follow him, but he just has a different style of leadership. And so, but anyway, I say all that because um, I think there's successful businesses and organizations that can be ran by those who don't have that servant heart leadership style,
Mhm.
right? Would you agree with that or no?
I agree 100%
Okay.
that happens out there.
Yeah.
Where I challenge folks is that I believe that if they start to adapt servant leadership strategies and methods, they will be even more successful.
Yeah.
And that's how you drive and motivate folks to grow in their leadership capacity. And yeah, there's folks out there who are by their definition tremendously successful, and where I decided I was I was more motivated to be significant than to be successful in traditional terms. I worked for nonprofits for my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, $1 million or $10 million. That if that's the measure of success,
Yeah.
I don't have that.
Sure.
It just. But I've had significance in people's lives,
Right.
and that is so enriching and so much more.
Yeah.
And I think leaders who are kind of top down or have that driving will be even more successful if they do it. If you treat people well and you're kind to them, and being kind doesn't mean necessarily being nice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not performing, I'm being kind to you by helping you adjust your performance.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just a different way.
Yeah.
And we're bound to have a better relationship because of that,
Mhm.
because I'm listening to you, you're listening to me, than, hey, go do this and don't do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that we were speaking of meekness as part of a good leadership quality.
Mhm.
You have the power as a leader to, how would I say it? Help me out, Ian. So you have the power to control the situation or to tell somebody what they need to do, but you don't always release that in a way that is that comes down on them.
Right.
Right. You have the power to do it, but yet you constrain that in a way.
Mhm.
So I think that's part of being that good leader is having the power,
Yeah.
but not always using it for your benefit. And trying to control situations with it.
It just occurs to me that almost everything gets boiled down to this binary, you're one or the other. And it's very often that somewhere in between the two polar opposites is probably a good place to land. So what you're saying makes sense to me about employing servant-hearted leadership in a space that is very results-oriented is probably a great way to improve upon what you've maybe already you've learned to do it a certain way, but you can adapt to these principles in a way that helps the people around you flourish, builds that legacy that you were talking about, which is even more impressive. And not that everything's about being impressive, but like it is really rewarding to have a positive impact in people's lives, whether or not you're making millions of dollars was your example, or whatever it is that you want to be successful at.
Absolutely, and you'll read in my chapter. I didn't come upon this easily. I was lucky enough to have some mentors who were all about servant leadership early on and throughout my career, but I've employed horrible tactics in managing people.
Yeah.
It just and did it over and over, thinking this is going to work, and then realize, oh, I'm leading from a place of scarcity, not a place of abundance, and I want to be about it, and then doing a 180 and doing it differently.
Yeah.
So
In leadership, a self gets in the way a lot as well. So, leading not from a selfish motive, right? In seeing, doing it, serving others rather than serving yourself.
Right.
I found is very helpful. If I can get out of the way, this isn't always about me.
Right.
It's about those that God has put around me or entrusted me with as an employer or as a leader, and it's about serving them. I love a lot of the things that you said. One of the things that is in our mission statement, if you look when you go down the hall, we have a mission statement, we have core values, is the first thing that you'll read is people over profits.
Right.
And I picked up on that, and I don't know if it was you that wrote that or if it was one of the other authors.
It's one of the other authors.
Oh,
but
is
yeah,
it? Yeah. So
just,
that really resonated with me, and it just confirmed that, that's good. That's okay.
absolutely.
We can
absolutely.
focus on, let's focus on the
because
people.
when times get tough, people are going to support you if you're supporting your people.
Yeah.
The money's not going to support you
Yeah.
if you don't have it.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you want to invest in? Do you want to invest in the people?
Exactly.
And I think that's their point as well in that chapter. So, investing in people has been a huge part of what I've tried to do, what I've tried to model in different ways, whether it's at camp, at home, at church, that sort of thing. So
I think that's really huge. I was thinking early on, just with your YMCA origin story that you were telling us, like, I think that in many ways we live in a culture that mirrors the 1800s in England. Like, we don't have factories, but every high school is full of kids that are on their phone every minute that they possibly can be, and the largest corporations in our country are mining their data, selling that for profit, and the lives that you live when you're terminally online and stuck on social media are limited at best, and then usually, like, there's an immoral twist to all of that, speaking generally. And so I think that the body aspect of mind, body, and soul, or whatever the spirit, mind, body. So the body aspect is huge because a lot of kids just, you can play video games and that's just as fun, right? But your body is so important to, like, maintain and develop and like be adventurous with, like you were saying, ride a canoe, learn archery, and the spirit and what is it? Spirit, mind, body. Sorry. So I haven't worked for the Y.
No, it's okay.
But the spirit, mind, body concept, you can't split those things apart. And so when you improve your body, I think you're developing the spirit and mind as well. And so anyway, I think that overall, when you're taking into account servant leadership ideas, it seems like you're kind of doing that in the workplace. So now we have, you've worked for the Young Men's Christian Association, but it's like, really, these things are global. They apply universally. And so you can take them into the workplace and improve people's spirits and minds and bodies through what you can do. And that's just your 9 to 5 or whatever it is that people are doing. So that's a great opportunity.
One of the things I've noticed, that kids write, it's just you don't hear about kids wanting to become astronauts anymore, or necessarily, when I was a kid, I was, grow up to be president, it's just, you don't hear that. They want to grow up to be influencers.
Yeah.
Which there's that word.
Leadership. Yeah.
But then they'll post things, about living my best life. And it's like, but are you being your best? Are you,
margaritas in Tahiti or whatever, is that really the peak?
Are you learning to be your best self? Are you putting that out there?
Yeah.
It's like, you can live your best life, but is that your best self?
Yeah.
Are you serving other people? Are you, not that everyone has to serve everyone, but it does work out so much better if we're working together to promote whatever it is we're going to promote, whether it's education at the high school or in church or, running a country, it just, all the different ways that are out there.
I think we're selfish by nature. We're born that way. And I think we need to be very intentional about focusing on others rather than ourselves. There's a lot of scriptures in the Bible that reference that. You know, we were thinking of Philippians 2, where it talks about don't think of yourself more highly than you ought, lifting others up more than yourself, and doing it with humility. And I think in the book I read a lot about humility. You know, that's a huge attribute, and it can't be false humility, because we can fake it, you know, to manipulate or whatever the case is for self-gratification.
Right.
But I think there's something with true humility that goes a long ways. Not quite sure where I was going with that, but anyway. So
I know, you know, using humor in my leadership has been a big part of that, and that
Yeah.
self-deprecating
Yes.
humor, as opposed to bringing other people down. It's a, you know, I'll target myself.
yes,
And be humble and use humility within that
yeah,
as a leader. You
Yeah.
know, it just I'm fair game because I'm the leader.
yeah,
Nobody else is. You know, it just although they start to learn that that's a great way to bring people
Yeah.
together.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's good stuff out there. So.
Well, the book "Serving from the Heart," I love the title. As soon as I saw it, it really resonated with me, and I'm really interested in reading the full book. I've only read little pieces that I could grab a hold of online, so I'm really interested in reading the book. It's a #1 bestseller by the looks of it at this point.
On Amazon, we within a 24-hour period became a #1 bestseller, and you know, the way Amazon, it's all the different categories.
Yeah.
And we ranked #1 in 6 different categories. You know, so Christian stewardship, Christian leadership. I forget all the different ones. We're still ranking in new releases in the top 20 in like 3 or 4 categories.
That's great.
So
That's great.
So you know, if you're interested in the book, it's available on Amazon. It's also, you know, the way the publisher works is they invest in us, so they get all the glory of that. I get to say that I'm a #1 bestseller on Amazon.
Yeah.
And if you go through my website, you know, the Clippy/alferreira.com, whatever, and you buy the book from me, that's where, you know, I won't make any money off of it, but I'll get something for
Okay.
it.
Nice. That's
So,
a pat on the back.
yeah,
Good
exactly.
job, Rod.
Good job.
Yeah, it's
So
influencing you to
just,
write another book for them.
so, well, you know, it just, you know, talking about social media, I started a few months ago, I started reaching out to kids who were with me in a leadership program at camp about a dozen years ago. I'd reached out to about 40 of them. I've heard from about 10 or 11 of them so far. And so as I'm working on an idea for a new series of articles for my blog, or potentially a new book about where they are today and what camp did for them then. Specifically, they were all in a leadership program called Superstar Leadership at camp. And I, you know, because of social media, I can find them. A few of them I was still, you know, chatting with now and then, and being able to ask them, you know, so where is life taking you in these past 10, 12 years? And what did you learn at camp that you're still employing today? So I think that's the onus of the next series of articles or series or that might lead to a book. So.
There's something that caught Ian's eye, and I know he's waiting to ask the question on it. It was about the archery.
Oh, yeah. It says that you built an archery curriculum.
Yeah. The Easton Foundation. Oh my God.
Of Olympic something or other?
Olympic archery in schools. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hired me back in 2016 because of John Maxwell that I got that job, by
Nice.
the way, to redo their curriculum. They had this curriculum that they were, you know, putting out to schools around the country, and it was over 100 pages, and it's like, oh my god, and it was a lot.
Mhm.
So they hired me to boil it down, do something that you can deliver in a semester, and get people encouraged to come back and do more. So to the book that I mentioned earlier, when people start to perform and behave a certain, you reward them, they'll come back for more. It just so we put into the curriculum kind of an I am program where they can get these I am pins that really had nothing to do with archery, but had more to do with character development within archery, that brought them back because they want to get all of them. It's out there. There's about 170 schools last count around the country, and the 3 Easton. So there's an Easton archery center in Southern California, in Utah, and in Florida. I've only been to the one in Florida, interestingly enough.
Utah's beautiful. If you've never been, you should check it out.
I have been to Utah. I did in college. I did an internship at a small town newspaper in Utah.
That's
so
awesome.
In Tremont, in Utah.
Wow.
It just, really
Yeah,
small
yeah.
town.
Yeah.
It just like 20 minutes from Idaho.
Wow.
It just,
Yeah, no kidding.
it was an hour to the nearest McDonald's.
Okay.
So
That's small.
So
Yeah.
that's small.
Warsaw's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that bad.
Yeah.
So,
So how do you enjoy? We'll wrap it up here pretty quickly here, but how do you enjoy living in the village of Warsaw? Do you like the community here?
oh my gosh.
I know you're not going to say anything different because you're living here. So
No. I love, again, I joked earlier about being a village person, it just, so my 2 older kids, they're 22 months apart, and then Brian's 6 years younger than Kelly. They lived, we all lived at camp for a long time. We moved to camp when they were 1.5 and 3.5 years old. And so all they knew was camp life.
Yeah.
At one point in time, the last 2 years I was in California, I was running multiple YMCAs and camps and day camps. And so we moved off the mountain. The kids call those 2 years the neighborhood years. It's when Brian was born, so, and then we moved back to camp when we went to Florida, and then we moved to camp here. So having lived in the city growing up, Los Angeles, really, Pasadena, just, being able to go to a Dodger game at the drop of a hat. No, I'm not in Dodger country.
That's all right.
I've met 2 other people in town that.
Well,
that,
hold on. You got James Cummins. He was the bat boy for
Yeah.
Tommy Lasorda. Can you believe that? That's unbelievable.
That's amazing. I've met Tommy Lasorda several times.
Okay.
He had a restaurant in South Pasadena, and so he would be there greeting people during
That's
the off season.
fantastic.
It was so
Seems like quite the personality, Tommy.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Yeah. He's bigger than life. And but anyway, so having lived in a big city, having lived out in the middle of nowhere mountains, and then living in a village, village life is fantastic. I can walk to the hardware store, I can walk to get coffee, I can walk to the movie theater, I can go to Lori's, all the different things that you can do, the hardware store, and it's all close by. When we lived in the one camp in Southern California in the mountains, Leanne's mindset was, that's my wife, we had a 23.5 mile long driveway because that's how long it took her to get to a store,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so it's quiet here.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Leanne says ever since we moved here, we live in a postcard, no matter what time of year it is.
Yeah.
You're driving around. It's like, oh, look how beautiful it is.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day today.
New York
It
is
is.
incredible. For anybody that's ever gone anywhere else, I
Yeah.
think you get to come
Except
back
for December through March.
Well, December you still got Christmas to look forward to.
That's true.
And then
That's true.
January you're focused on your diet, and then February it really hits.
Yeah.
You're like, if the Bills aren't in the Super Bowl, this sucks.
Yeah.
So-
Right.
So have they ever been in the Super Bowl since you've been alive?
No.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
just sucked. Yeah.
Leanne's become the total Bills fan. I mean,
Okay.
I grew up with Roman Gabriel and the Los Angeles Rams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I actually got to interview Roman Gabriel when I was in college, because he was after he played football, he became a coach for football, and at Cal Poly he was the last coach when we had a football team.
Oh, no kidding.
So
That's cool.
while I was there at school.
That's cool.
But anyway,
Yeah.
So village life is fantastic. Leanne loves the Bills. You'll see the flag, the lights, all the things in front. The flamingos are Bills colors in our front yard. It just
great.
yeah. So
It's a good time to be a Bills fan.
Yeah,
It is.
and so have her listen to the podcast with James if she hasn't, because he's been to 4 of them.
Yeah.
In the 90s, the only 4 that they've been to, right? They've been to 4.
Yeah, they won 3 AFL championships before
Yeah.
it was the Super Bowl, but that does not count.
Yeah.
And it was a long time ago.
So just real quick, sir, my first year, so as a camp director, what do you do the rest of the year? Well, part of what I would do is, get awareness about camp, fundraising about camp. My first year here, so it was 2010, the spring of 2010. I'm going around doing what I call the rubber chicken circuit, going to Rotary clubs and Kiwanis clubs and things in Buffalo and Erie County and stuff. And I got invited to the big Rotary group in Buffalo. And the guy who invited me, the president of the Rotary Club, said, "Oh, we're going to give you money, and we'll come and do a 20-minute talk about camp." So I have this whole thing ready to go. 20 minutes. I get there. We're having lunch and that sort of thing. And somebody is, "Oh, we have a very special guest today, and so and so who was part of the Bills team when they went to the
Super Bowls.
the Super Bowls, the
Four
four
yeah.
years, and people start chanting, "Marv, Marv, Marv," and he goes up and he talks for 15 minutes. And I'm
You gotta follow
You
that?
got to follow Marv Levy in Buffalo.
I have no idea who Marv is, other than
geez.
what he's saying that he was,
Yeah.
And so never follow Marv at a Rotary meeting.
No.
Because I had my cards there. I'm ready for my 20 minutes. I'm like throwing every other card out. I did it in 4.5 minutes. And nobody, people were still chanting Marv
Yeah.
while I'm talking. And I had no control
Excuse me, I'm Al.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
I was grateful for the $500 donation.
That is so funny.
That's great.
Well, Al, you don't have to follow anybody here, so you get your own episode today.
Yeah.
So
Well, I appreciate that.
We appreciate you
So,
coming
yeah.
out. And here's the book, Serving from the Heart. You can find it on Amazon.com. You could also search Al Ferreira. What's your website?
Well, you can go to alferreracoaching.com, which is my blog, which
Okay.
has the book right on the front, and you click on that, and it'll take you to how to buy it. From
And that
there.
gets
So-
Al a gold star.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. So
Number one
it just-
bestseller. So we're thinking of maybe look for this too. We're thinking of doing a book signing here at the cafe at some point. We'll see if we can't put that together, but that'll be down the
fantastic.
road. So we'll see how that comes about. But we do appreciate you coming in. We're grateful for your time and taking it out and chatting with us and sharing your life experience and sharing the new book here that you've written with other authors. And so just real quick before we leave you, is there anything that we could take from the book or Serving from the Heart and specifically here in the community of Warsaw? What can we do to serve others better or to create that culture that you speak of in the book here in the village?
Part of what
Wyoming County.
Part of what I see here already is that servant leadership. It just the Greenleaf Foundation that coined the term servant leadership back in the 60s. It's just that the original servant leader is Jesus.
Yes.
That's very clear. And I see that happening all the time. During the pandemic, watching the community support one another, people getting out to try to support different things that are happening. It's why I love village life. I was talking to somebody that I met through church the other day, who does pies and cookies for the prisoners here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, does anyone know that happens? I mean, that's such a great thing.
Yeah.
That we have some prisoners here in the jail, and somebody thinks enough to make pies for them during holidays and cookies once a month, to just take to them. So I see servant leadership happening all the time in the community. The food pantry. I love the way you and Tammy and Pam at the ice cream shop. Oh my gosh,
Val.
Yummies,
Val, yeah.
Val at the at Yummies. How you collaborate and work all the time to support things. It just when I was listening to Tammy's podcast, I remember a few winters ago, or maybe 5-6 winters ago, some bus full of kids got stuck on the hill in the middle of winter, and she invited them all into the movie theater, gave them snacks while they were waiting for the bus to get repaired, let them watch a movie and stay warm. I mean, it just,
You're seeing a lot of that then here in the community. I see a lot
of that happening. And that's so encouraging because we don't, I wish we heard about that more. It just maybe using social media to get that word out more, whether it's this podcast for the community or different things that are out there. So many people talk about social media being so negative, and it's just, well, the algorithm works both ways. My algorithm, for example, on Facebook is all about positive messages. I don't see negative things on Facebook because I don't look for that. I see all about, people supporting, great leadership quotes, stories, that sort of thing, because that's what I look for. And so that's what comes across my feed. It just...
and that's what you found here in the village of
And
Warsaw.
that's what I find here in this community is just that. So.
Awesome.
So thank you again for being that force, part of that. It just, I look for servant leadership. I'm sitting with some of it right now. So,
well, we appreciate that. Well, thanks again, Al, and we will catch up.